Hello, everyone, and welcome to Soul Footing Guidance. Today, we're going to get into shoulds and we're going to get into shame. I know we talk about shoulds a lot on this channel, and finding our way back to ourselves and how do we actually do that? How do we kind of follow our inner compass when we have the collective and the world and our families and all of these people telling us like how we should do things and what we should do and all of that. So, we're going to talk about shoulds. We're going to talk about how do we let shoulds go. We're going to talk about how shoulds impact our decision making. But we're also going to talk about like, okay, so now you're ready to challenge shoulds in your life and you're actively making changes of learning to listen to yourself and you're taking action on, okay, I'm making a decision that someone else in my life wouldn't make or doesn't think I should make. Now what? Like, how do we actually stand firm in our decisions and stand firm in what we think we should do? Because there are like tools and nervous system regulation skills and things like that that we can do to actually stand firm in it. So we'll go from there. So when we're talking about shoulds, like just even starting there, it's anything external from you that is taking you away from your authority, right? Things that are moving you away from what you think is right for you, your intuition, your inner knowing. And it happens so much, right? Like getting pulled into the shoulds is a really common experience. And there's so many people that are going to do things a different way, or that, if you go to people for advice, they're like, well, I would do it this way, and this is how I would handle it, and this is how I see it. And a lot of people saying, I would do it this way if I were you. And I'm always like, would they do that if they were you? Right? Like if they were living in your body, if they have had the life experience that you have had, if they truly were you, would they make the decision they say they would make if they were you? I don't know. Like, I don't know if any of us can say with certainty that someone else should do things a certain way. But it's rampant, right? Like, and the amount of judgment and the amount of shame and the amount of opinions that other people have about how other people should live their life, there's a lot of noise. And so we're not letting go necessarily of the things that people tell you or opinions that people have that you're like, you know what? I really like that. Or that really fits for me, right? We're only talking about the things that don't align, that don't feel right, that, you're making life decisions about something that you're like, I don't actually want that, but I feel like I have to, right? Like I always think of people who are like, I really don't want to go to college, but everyone is telling me I have to. And everyone is telling me that like this is the right way. Maybe like in my personal experience, I loved college and I got a lot out of it and I'm really glad I went, but that's because I wanted to go and I am glad I did. And I think there can be so much noise too around like regret and people worrying about other people regretting things where that's also okay if you do something and you're like, shoot, I wanted to do that a different way. That there's no right or wrong or perfectionism in the decisions that we make, right? Like we might make a decision or enter into a relationship that turns out really bad and it doesn't mean we shouldn't have done it, right? It's like I have entered into, I always think of like the last relationship that I was in where I was like, this is right for me right now and I want to do this and this is what I'm doing right now. And it ended in a crash and burn rough way. And yet I don't regret it, right? I don't regret being in that relationship because, I mean, it was a lot of time with someone that I did care about. And also, I learned so much about myself and I learned so much about my wants and my needs and my fear of speaking up for myself and just like a lot of things that I needed to learn. And I needed to, in my experience, I needed to learn them in a crash and burn kind of way. No one could have told me not to enter into that relationship. I wouldn't have listened to anyone. So why we're moving out of shoulds and moving into our own inner authority is so that we get to make decisions that are going to help us grow and evolve and that are right for us at the time, right? Like we're not talking about 10 years from now, we're talking about decisions in the now. And then trusting that we're going to, when we listen to our inner authority, we're going to be taken where we need to go. It doesn't mean we're not going to feel pain. It doesn't mean we're not going to feel discomfort, because life is such that that's going to happen. And at the same time, when we follow our inner authority and when we become our own guide and we can listen to our own inner knowing, our own inner voice, we can really like lean in and see the beauty along the way. Like the beauty of the journey that is chaos at times, or is, whatever it might be. So, shoulds get in the way of decision making in a lot of ways, right? It's like I work with a lot of people who are like, if I wouldn't have had other people telling me what I should do, if I wouldn't have listened, I would be doing a completely different thing. Or, I would have done this or I wouldn't have done this. So shoulds can really make it so other people become someone's authority. And at the core of my work with people is that. How do we help people come back home to themselves and really lean into how they are meant to make decisions? Because we're not making decisions for how someone else would do it. We're making decisions of what is right for us and what do we need to do for our life and what feels right. Because what feels right to me is not going to feel right to everyone. The other part that can get really tricky with shoulds in decision making and other people's ideas coming into our decision making, and I see this a lot, is other people having fear for us, right? Like, I often think of the example of me moving here to Mexico, right? And like, I am now married, I have a child, and my friends and my family love my husband. And at the same time, people were very apprehensive about me moving here, of me driving here, of me starting my life here, right? Because I don't think a lot of people in my life would have made the same decision as I would have. And I also have a lot of anxiety in my family line about and worry about everything in life, right? About like safety. And I'm someone who I take leaps, I take risks. I moved from Minnesota to Oregon. And like that was a really big leap for me. And that was another thing where people are like, wouldn't you rather go closer to home? Like you could just go a couple hours away to grad school. And for me, it was like, no, I don't know why, but like Portland is calling me. And it did. And now here I am in Mexico and it was calling me. And starting my life here and meeting my partner and now being married and having a baby, like it, I know that all of those things were the right leaps for me. But when we listen to shoulds, I wouldn't be here. And, there are a lot of things, whether it's people listen to shoulds and then they don't do certain things, or they enter into careers or they enter into relationships that are a bit compromising. And maybe they don't even know they're compromising, right? Because they're like, I'm just doing what I was told I should do. I'm doing the steps. I'm checking the boxes. The tricky thing about shoulds is there's also a often idea that like when you check off these boxes, you will be satisfied. You will be happy with your life. You will feel joy. You will feel contentment. When really my belief is that we don't feel those things. We don't feel satisfied or content if we're not living life according to our own authority, right? Like a lot of times people are like, I checked the boxes. Everyone said I would feel this way. And yet I feel empty, unsatisfied. I don't feel the purpose-driven life I was told I would feel when I did X, Y, and Z. So decision making and shoulds, they're part of the lesson, I think, too, right? There's a lot of conditioning and there's a lot of noise. So sometimes it takes us a little while to take away the shoulds and take away other people's opinions to how we should do things. But what I found when people do learn how to do it, when people learn how to listen to their own authority, when they learn how to come back to that inner voice of what's right or what they want or what's going to make them happy, depending on what your authority is, that's where we get kind of the highest expression of ourselves. Whether that's success, whether that's satisfaction, whether that's peace, whether that's kind of a wonderful surprise with life. So let's imagine you did the hard thing and you're like, okay, I'm going to make these decisions anyway. I'm going to learn how to listen to myself. I am, even though I have a bunch of people in my life telling me not to do this, I'm going to do what I think is right. And then you do it. I think an important part of this is kind of leaving room and openness for the discomfort that comes with doing this for the first time. Or kind of coming back to, okay, I did the thing, and now I might have people telling me that I shouldn't have done that, or I have people doubting me, or maybe I don't have any noise, but like there's panic of like, I did the thing, and now what? Leaving room for discomfort is a big part of it. Because if we don't leave room for discomfort, it can kind of almost be interpreted as like we're doing something wrong or something bad is happening because we feel uncomfortable. Instead of like anytime we are up leveling or we are kind of touching our edges of our evolution, we're going to feel discomfort. Anytime we're stretching, we're leaping, we're doing something new, we will feel discomfort. So then what do we do with that discomfort? Right? So that's like the tools, the skills, especially when you're like, okay, I use my strategy and authority. I really listen to myself. This was a hell yes, or this felt right to me, or however your authority tells you to make a decision and helps you learn how to listen to the language of your body. Then we do the practices of grounding and nervous system regulation and all of that. So one of the main skills or tools that I like to start people out with is in for 4, out for 8 breathing. In for 4 through your nose, out for 8 through your mouth. And why I have people do that is because it's a really quick regulator of your nervous system because it forces breath into your diaphragm. And when we're in diaphragmatic breath, it's actually harder for our body to like move into that fight or flight panicky energy of like, what did I just do? Right. So we make a decision that was hard for us to make. Maybe it was a big one. Maybe it was a big leap. Maybe it feels like our life blew up because we made the decision that we've been needing to make for a while. The decision that was hanging in the balance. And so we make it. And then we get real with ourselves of like, I'm feeling discomfort. And this discomfort doesn't mean anything is wrong. It means I'm touching this edge. Breathe. And I like to also count while breathing and then add things to that, right? Of like, if again, we're thinking diaphragmatic breath, maybe we move into singing. Maybe we need to do some dancing. We need to get our body engaged. We need to get embodied in ourselves. I also think just kind of from like a sensory perspective, everyone is different. So some people find smell really grounding, or some people feel like touching things is really helpful, like having a fidget, having things that are like interesting for our fingertips almost, like using those nerve endings. Looking at things that are visually appealing, right? Like we're really getting in touch with time and space, really getting in touch with our environment. There are a lot of acupressure points that you can look into for various different things to kind of help ride out discomfort. There are a lot of ways we can look at, like some people have high proprioception needs, so they need to do something that feels really physical. Something that almost helps their body be reminded that they're in time and space, like their joints need some reminders of like, hey, I exist. For other people, not so much. They're more sensitive to those things, and so they're actually wanting to get rid of those things. For some people, eyes opened, looking around is helpful. For other people, closing your eyes and going within. So it just kind of depends. And then that's just kind of our starting point, right? Then we move into, okay, so now we're going to try to use our authority more often. So we're maybe going to deal with discomfort, or we're maybe going to have some things shift. Another really important part of that shift is, do I have support people in my life that support me trusting my own inner authority? Do I kind of like that we heal in connection, we heal in community. So whether that is through mentorship support like I do, whether that is from like a community circle group situation, whether that's close friends, whether you have to buy the support or you have the support around you, we heal in relationship. And especially when you are making these big moves or you are doing these things that feel really hard, you're setting a boundary, you're leaving a relationship, you're leaving a job, you're starting something, right? Like whatever the new thing is that you're doing because you're listening to your authority, we're talking about stretching and growth edges, right? So we want to be mindful of like, this is a new way we're trying to navigate ourselves. And so it's not like we just want to deal with that discomfort one time. You might be like, I need bigger mechanisms for dealing with this type of discomfort moving forward when I'm trying to make these leaps and moves and listen to myself in this way. I also think of like the ways that we want to start setting up our life and making room for things that are a new way that we're going to do things. And I often look to, there's a doctor, what's her name? Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith came up with 7 different types of rest that I think is really important. So the 7 types are physical rest, mental rest, sensory rest, creative rest, emotional rest, social rest, and spiritual rest. Because I think even that, right, when we use the word rest, like that as being part of how we help navigate our nervous system and regulation, the word rest even is overwhelming for a lot of people because it's like, what does that mean? Like, we think of napping and laying down and being like, that's rest. When really, there might be all these creative ways, right? Like, do you need to learn how to express your feelings and your emotions, or you need to start journaling, or maybe you're someone who needs to go on more walks, or maybe you're someone who's like, I need a creative outlet and I need time where I get to just do my own thing, or maybe you're someone who, you need to create kind of a spiritual practice for yourself that feels grounding. Once we leave room for that discomfort, then we leave room for the creativity of like, okay, how am I going to build a life that allows me to be with this discomfort because I know that trusting my own authority is more important than anything else. And, like I use human design when I help people because strategy and authority and type are so helpful for finding your footing and finding like what helps you make these moves and how do you start listening. It doesn't tell you what decisions you should make, right? That's on you, but it does give you that like, okay, here's what it might feel like in your body. Here's what it might sound like. Here are some practices we can use to help you hear that voice, right? And if you can hear that voice inside of you more clearly, then when you have these big leaps that come to you or these big things you have to make decisions on, it doesn't feel so scary. On top of, so it's the human design side and the regulating our discomfort side and moving through somatically through that discomfort because you are truly building new neural pathways when you start doing this, especially if you've either never done it or it's been a really long time since you've been kind of committed to these types of practices. You'll be supported in all those ways. So thank you for joining me. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok at Soul Footing Guidance. Also at my website, soulfootingguidance.com. Right now I am doing one-on-one mentorship for people who are really ready to like dive in, especially if you're either coming from a big life thing that happened or you're navigating big life decisions. Really specialize in working with people who are wanting to break cycles, break patterns. And this is a big spot we break patterns on, right? Of like learning how to trust ourselves is often part of the pattern that we're breaking. And the people before us not having those tools to trust themselves and come back home to themselves. So I'm also doing readings too, if you're more wanting to dip your toe and get started with your human design experience and learn more about kind of how you can break patterns and even what your patterns are that you might want to look more into, shadow work that you might want to look more into. So yeah, reach out and I will see you next time.